Hey there guys, we're back and I did farm a couple Arcane Scaling and Radial gems, and after that point I decided to go and do the Orphan of Kos, which I would consider the hardest fight in this game. I am pretty over leveled for it though. You can do Orphan of Kos a lot earlier, but the main strategy for Arcane, and it can be helpful for melee builds in general, is if you have enough Arcane to use Augur of Abritus, you can really take advantage of that in his first phase and really save a lot of health files by just continuously backstabbing him with it and then getting the riposte, or the backstab, whatever you would want to call it. So while this boss is difficult in the second phase no matter what, you can actually do pretty well just kind of baiting out his attacks in the first phase. There's not really a concrete strategy unless you're really good at parrying, I would say. Parrying is the other option, of course. So, but I would suggest using Augur because does generally tend to be easier. Now, I think he is pretty resistant to arcane and elemental damage. I am still using my fire weapon here, but I believe he is least resistant to fire. But if you want to, if you're a bit lower level and your gems aren't great, what you can do is you can use a physical weapon instead, and you'll probably do more damage on those visceral attacks. And you can get some pretty decent droplet physicals just from the Winter Lanterns that we killed before. It basically is right outside his boss room. There's a couple of them. So if you want to farm those, then yeah. He seemed to be pretty happy to do the jump attack here. If he does the jump attack, you can just walk into him and you'll get a free backstab pretty much. Now his second phase, he's very aggressive, but you can see that even though he is resistant to arcane, you can do a very good amount of damage with gloves. Now, I wouldn't suggest actually trying to hit him while he's in the air there. If you see him jump, then just don't bother using gloves. But I figured I'd try it. Also, jump back here, not jump towards him, because he does throw the bombs closer to him there. And once again, this time I learn. Progress, people. But yeah, phase 2 is extremely aggressive, so make sure that you are doing the best you can to keep away from him, and make sure that you bring him to the water for that lightning attack, because that can screw you up if you're close to the corpse on the beach as well. But as you can see, I am kind of spamming gloves at him, but it is doing a decent amount of damage. But I am going to have to finish this by actually getting a hit on him, and I think I get hit like several times here. So I am definitely overleveled for this fight, and my weapon's still doing good damage. But this is kind of a tough fight no matter what. I just made it a little bit easier for myself by having spammable hunter tools. But the reason we're doing this is because you get a weapon from killing Kos. A weapon that I don't actually like that much, the Kos Parasite, which is a pure arcane weapon, which is nice to have, but you get it pretty late if you're not willing to do Kos early, and I'm not good at this fight at all, so I generally would not do that. You can get some extra insight by killing the nightmare on the corpse after the fight, but otherwise that's pretty much it. I am going to try and use the Kos Parasite a little bit just to show it off, but I'm honestly not a fan of how slow the attacks are to start compared to other weapons. And I decided to go and take out these guys as well, mostly using the Executioner gloves and the Saw Spear. But one of the harder non-boss fights, I would say, is these two whale enemies in this pit. You don't even really need to bother with this area unless you want the Rakuo, which is a skill weapon, a very cool skill weapon, but one that I'm not going to use anyway. But as you can see, using the gloves on them from range is pretty effective for taking one of them out, and then The other one is generally not too bad to take out after that. They take a decent amount from fire, I noticed, so either way. He was taking like 700 per R1, which is pretty ridiculous. So you can probably melee them with a fire weapon, but you can also just kind of spam hunter tools from a distance, which can be handy. Okay, so the Nightmare of Mensis, and finally I actually show off some of the gems that I got for the Uncanny Parasite. Now, they aren't the best gems ever, but they are pretty good. And I also get about 300, it was a 284 AR, I believe that was. Don't be fooled by the AR that it displays, because most of the Kos Parasite attacks have high multipliers on them. So it's kind of misleading, the attack rating that is there. You see I'm doing like 500 there. So you have like a kind of two-handed mode as well. And there's an interesting sort of attack that consumes quicksilver bullets as well. Also, your roll is amazing with the Kos Parasite. And in case you didn't know, you do need to use the Milkweed rune for the Kos Parasite to do pretty much anything. So keep that in mind. You are going to be broccoli head if you want to use it. But like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of it really. But I can't go the rest of the game without at least using it a little bit. I'm not going to use it too much. Probably just this area mostly. But yeah, it's a relatively fun weapon. It's just, I don't know, it's a bit slow to start up compared to the other faster weapons. And if you really need an arcane weapon, and honestly, arcane is probably the worst of the three elements anyway. Fire is definitely the best, just because it's so useful against most enemies in the game. And if you need a bolt weapon, you don't even really need a bolt weapon apart from, unless you want to kill a few of the bosses that are fire immune, basically, with a different weapon. But even then, you could take the gems out before you do it and just rock it physical anyway. So, yeah. An arcane weapon really isn't necessary. But the Kos Parasite has a cool moveset. I will grant it that. And it does look cool. But I'm generally just not too much of a fan of it, unfortunately. Now, the gems I got were pretty good, but I didn't spend a lot of time farming them. There is these bone ash hunters you can farm. I'll leave the glyphs in the description that I used for the gems that I got, but I really didn't get any secondary attributes that would add more flat arcane damage, because those are generally the best ones you can get. But the problem being that arcane gems in general are just fairly rare, so I did spend quite a long time farming, but I wasn't willing to get the absolute best because it will just take forever, essentially. So the rest of this area in Nightmare of Mensis is actually pretty short, this area, but there is quite a few annoying enemies. So the pigs here are pretty strong, but you can also lure them out to the Shadows of Yharnam here, and they will fight each other, which does half your job for you. I actually only pulled one of them over. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know, the startup is a bit much, I would say. Or at least I think so. It does decent damage, but the Saw Spear just does so much more DPS, really, at least I found. So yeah. The other thing is that I believe I went and grabbed the Communion rune, not the Communion rune, the Clockwise Metamorphosis HP rune. I went and grabbed the increased version from the one of the Chalice dungeons. So that gives up to 15% more HP, and I basically leveled until I had 40 vitality and then stopped there. And honestly, I could have stopped before that. Really, as long as you reach 99 arcane and have an okay health pool of at least 25, though you might want like 30. Something like that. 30 at least. You'll be able to pretty much stomp anything in the game just because the hunter tools are ridiculous at that point. And you can kind of just spam them with blood bullets, so yeah. Very much good in the late game compared to pretty much any other build that I played. But admittedly, I have not done stuff like Strength Arcane. I've not done stuff like really high skill build. I've never actually used the Rikuyo, which is a bit of a shame. I might do that at some point on my own time. But yeah, I've mainly been looking forward to Sekiro at this point because it is only a few months from release now. It's probably going to be pretty good. Yeah, once again, you do have a heavy attack. I actually get frenzied by this pig here. I didn't even know they could frenzy you. I honestly didn't. But it's probably just these ones. Maybe I'm mistaken. But yeah, like I said, I am looking forward to Sekiro. That's definitely one that I'm going to be picking up at the end of March. But there is some that you can like. There is some footage coming out now, but really we've seen very little of the game compared to other games that usually spoil quite a bit before they actually come out. Or at least what I've noticed. So yeah, we got the NPC there. I also use Yusefka's Blood Vial because for some reason that's what's in this chest here. I also picked up the umbilical cord from Ariana's questline. So I didn't even bother going back to kill imposter Yusefka, but you know, you can do that if you want. And honestly, I forgot completely that I had completely skipped Logarius. I really should have done him a lot sooner because he's just going to be a joke after this point. So coming up to the boss here, this is Mergo's Wet Nurse. I kind of mess about in this boss fight just to kind of try and use the Kos Parasite's bullet attack on the L2. But I don't think Mergo is... yeah, I need to move. There we go. I think it did a decent amount of damage here. Yeah, that's like 2,000 damage just from that. I think it uses like 3 bullets, I believe. Also, I get completely caught in these attacks. This boss isn't very hard, especially if you just stay behind her. She generally is just not a very difficult boss. But she can do some decent damage, so be careful if you have low vitality. I'm doing about 500 damage per attack. That attack does quite a bit of damage. But you can see that she has pretty much no tracking when she starts the blade slashes. She just pretty much just sits there and doesn't even care that you're killing her from behind. But yeah, so it actually has like decent range on that. I still hit that. L2. And I just walked into that completely. Yeah, you'll notice a deterioration in my playing by this point. Generally because Arcane has so many tools right now that I'm pretty much just messing about at this point. So there you go. Would it have been easier if I just used gloves and spammed them, or a Call Beyond? Although I would say gloves would probably be better. Yes, but I did want to show off at least part of the Kos Parasite because I'm not going to use it very much. And it does have a good roll animation, I will admit that. So, also it takes forever for the title to come up there. So you get another third umbilical cord, which is fine. And you'll need 3 of them for the secret ending and to fight the true final boss, if you want to do that. So, you know, it is one more boss to fight. And I can't remember what I'm doing here, because I don't need any more gems. I think I just go and get a blood rock to upgrade the parasite to +10, because I don't have another one, and it's 60 insight to get one, so I do have that just sitting around. So I think it gets to slightly over 300 AR. You can get better than that, but it does take a lot of effort if you want to get the absolute best gems. And I found it kind of unnecessary. Yeah, that's definitely going to be over 300. So there we go. Plus 10 Uncanny. Oh yeah, by the way, to get the Uncanny Kos Parasite, you're going to have to go and get a merchant from one of the Chalice dungeons, so keep that in mind. And next boss we got is Laurence, which is the boss that I skipped from the DLC. He is kind of a secret boss, so technically he's the last one. I don't know. You can do him pretty much as soon as you get Laurence's skull, so you'll notice that he is pretty weak to a Call Beyond. I think I tried gloves here and it's not that effective. Laurence is another one of those bosses that is immune to fire, along with the Watchdog. So if you got a fire weapon, then I wouldn't suggest coming here. You see that I'm not doing great damage with gloves. It did about 900 in that one cast, so it might actually be more effective than using a Call Beyond, just because of the bullet consumption. But you need to be relatively close in order to spam it, and he's got quite a few long range attacks that are dangerous. So, you know, this is a safer tactic. And really, you can take him on pretty easily with a bolt or arcane weapon. So, just keep that in mind. When it gets to the latter stage of the fight, he'll start crawling along the ground. You can see that the Kos Parasite does about 400 from that R1, which is pretty decent. Those blasts are really dangerous, so keep that in mind. Unfortunately, you can't really hit him too well when he's on the ground, because a Call Beyond is for larger enemies. I shouldn't have cast that there. It was stupid casting it in the corner. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I take him out with the Kos Parasite. Not really any point to doing this boss per se, but it is another boss fight, and you do get the Beast Embrace if you want to use Beasthood. But obviously that's not very useful for us, so there you go. And one of the last bosses before we do the final boss, well actually the last boss before we do the final boss, is Logarius, who I'd completely forgotten by this point. So I pretty much pick up at the point of no return where you drop off in Cainhurst Castle. Logarius is pretty much going to be just a joke. Even though he is extremely resistant to Arcane, more so than any enemy in the base game, I would say, we're so far above his level for this area that it really doesn't matter. I think I just end up spamming gloves at him, but honestly, if you want to do this fight legitimately at a lower level, I would suggest Augur of Ebritus, because you can parry him fairly well, and I do parry him a few times with it, and it does decent damage, even if it is an arcane, even if it is arcane damage, it will still take some damage from it. But you'll see that I pretty much my fire weapon does good damage to him as well, so I'm not going to use the Kos Parasite either. But it is one of the more difficult fights for an arcane build if you do it at a lower level when you're meant to. He is kind of a tricky boss, but you can also keep him at range if he just keeps casting his spells. Unfortunately, he does dodge quite a lot, so using gloves might not be the best strategy ever. But as you can see, gloves are doing a lot less damage than they would normally, so I end up just like going in for the fire damage really. But I do get hit by a few of his skull attacks. He also likes to kind of back off once you start doing attacks. Make sure that you backstab him here, because this is the point where he is powering up. You see that I did a lot of damage to him by getting the visceral and then just attacking. And yeah, he's done. Viscerals then R1s when he's staggered do a lot of damage, even if you don't get the riposte, even with a fire weapon. So yeah. So yeah, not the hardest fight, I would say. But once again, we are over leveled, and my game progression in this was not straightforward. So yep. So I finished with a level of 127, which is pretty high. Definitely high enough for a new game. I don't think anyone would deny that. But if you want to join the Vile Bloods, then you come here. But otherwise, there's not really anything that we get. Like Chikage, you're not really going to use that, are you? You're not a Blood Tinge build. So, if you want to do Alfred's quest to get the Logarius wheel, but that's more a strength arcane build. You wouldn't be able to use it here unless you put more points in the strength, and honestly, it wouldn't be as effective. By that I mean scaling for weapons kind of falls off after 50 arcane, so I wouldn't suggest that. I would suggest strength and arcane up to 50 instead. But I go ahead and join the Vile Bloods anyway because I don't know. I can't remember what the rune is that it gives you. Cainhurst badge. There you go. And we're ready to do the final bosses. So I go ahead and use those 3 items first of all. This is going to be relatively easy, as you could imagine, because I've delayed it so much. A lot of these bosses can burn through your bullets on New Game Plus because you have stopped scaling by this point for Arcane. So if you want to go into New Game Plus iterations, it is going to be more difficult for you. But I honestly was never really too excited to play New Game Plus, ever. Never really bothered with it mostly, so we're going to talk to Gehrman, pick the second option, of course, to actually fight the boss. But he takes a lot of damage from Arcane, considering. But you know, regular attacks are also effective. I don't think he's particularly weak to anything, so just something to keep in mind. But as you can see, you can kind of cheese him, especially with something like Black Sky Eye. But it really is not like the fight is difficult, and you know, it's not the hardest fight ever, so you'll need to do that. He'll pretty much be easy at this point if you're planning to do a 100% playthrough. Well, maybe not 100%, but if you've been to the lower chalices and got the best gems that you think you can get, it's going to be relatively easy on it, whatever build, because you'll just do ridiculous amounts of damage. And yeah, you can see that I'm spamming Black Sky here. I actually get out of his... I kind of tried to go... Yeah, so he powers up a little bit here, so he can roll better, but you probably could just spam him to death, but, you know, I immediately jump in and get parried, which was a bad decision on my part. I think I get hit like 3 or 4 times here at the end. That's what greed does to you. Motto of these games. Yeah, so he's relatively easy. For us at this point. You can also try and parry him, of course, with Augur, which might be a decent option. Now, watch what not to do at the start of this Moon Presence fight is cast a Call Beyond. I just kind of wanted to see how much damage it did, but I almost die immediately just because I'm being an idiot. So would not suggest doing that. I think he's pretty weak to fire, or at least more weak to fire than other elements. But you do so much damage with the melee, melee weapon that doesn't even matter really. You can see I basically trashed like 3/4 of his life bar in that one combo. And I finish it off with gloves. He hits me with the set your HP to 1 attack at the end. But I believe he gives you so much time to heal anyway that it doesn't even matter at the end, so. I was trying to use the choir bell at the end there, just to see if it would actually full heal me. I think it does like 1200 HP it recovers at max arcane. So it would have been close, but not exactly. At least I think so. So that's the final boss there. I hope this was enjoyable for you guys if you don't really know what to do with arcane, so to speak. I'm going to leave in the description the gems that I used. They are taken from a website that is a very good resource, but it is also for the most optimal gems. You could use the normal versions of weapons and don't care about the triangles and just use Radial, either Radial triangle or Radial waning. Both of them are fine, really. Although I think the waning is generally better. But if you want to get the best ones, you're generally using the lost version, which has a triangle and a waning and a radial. So just something to keep in mind. I hope this was informative, especially the airway parts. I love this attack, but yeah. I hope it was informative to anyone who was kind of struggling a bit with an arcane build, especially at the start, but you get so powerful at the end that it really doesn't matter what you do. Here's the overview of my stats. I don't have the safe equipped, and I hope that was enjoyable. Thanks guys.